morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the JVS Toronto team, welcome to Bridges to Career Success virtual event. Thank you so much for joining us today for this special fireside chat, where our mentors are going to talk about job search wins and woes. My name is Sharvari Jois, and I'm the Director of Online and Mentoring Services at JVS Toronto. Whether you're tuning in from Canada or joining us pre-arrival, we are so thrilled to have you all here. Today's session is all about real stories, real challenges, and real hope. You'll hear from two incredible mentors from our pre-arrival program, Canada Infonet. These mentors, just like many of you, once stood at the beginning of their Canadian job search journey. And they're here today to share not only the obstacles they faced, but the wins they celebrated, the lessons they learned, and the practical tips they picked up along the way. Why are these sessions like these so important? Because no one should have to figure this out all by themselves. Learning from the journeys of others can save you time, help you avoid common pitfalls, and just as importantly, give you the encouragement to keep going. These real stories offer practical advice and remind us that success looks different for everyone, but support and shared knowledge can make the path clearer. We hope you leave today with a few more tools in your toolkit, a little more confidence, and the comforting reminder that others have walked this road, and so can you too. We hope you leave today, with the understanding that it is a journey that many individuals have excelled in, succeeded in, and we are bringing to you a couple of those journeys. Please note that this session is pre-recorded, but you will have an opportunity to interact with Helia directly at the mentoring roundtable, and I'm sure Varun wouldn't mind you reaching out to them directly. So please make sure you've attended these sessions as well as reach out to our mentors. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today. Helia Sorabi is a data scientist and the founder of Montwave Consulting, where she helps businesses make smarter decisions by optimizing their operations. Originally from Iran, Helia arrived in Canada 17 years ago with a strong technical background, but had to rebuild her career from the ground up. Along the way, she learned a third language, French, and embraced the challenge of adapting to a new culture. Today, she draws on both her lived experience and personal expertise to support and inspire newcomers to finding confidence, clarity, and success in their own careers. Welcome, Helia. Varun Chandrasekhar is a senior manager at Scotiabank with over a decade of experience in client strategy and marketing roles. He leads programs that helps the bank acquire, deepen, and retain client relationships. As an immigrant and as a Rotman MBA graduate, Varun is passionate about helping newcomers thrive in Canada. He actively volunteers to support newcomers with career guidance and mentorship through his involvement with organizations such as the Canadian Marketing Association, JVS Toronto, Access Employment, and universities like the University of Toronto. Welcome, Varun. I think we'll get started today with both of you. If you could briefly share your newcomer journey to Canada, what brought you here, and what were your first impressions of the Canadian job market?
I can start. Hello, everyone, and I hope to be of service to your journey today. I came to Canada 17 years ago to pursue my PhD studies. So my story might be a bit different from some of you who come here for work. I started the studies here, and of course, because I didn't know French and I was studying at a French university, I had some challenges with language in addition to culture differences. But I persevered. I did lots of activities with other international students. I get involved in mentoring activities and try to find my way and adjust myself both culturally and from language perspective. And then I started entering the job market. I had already passed that period of adjustment through my university studies, but there was still a lot to learn. And I hope here to be of help.
Thank you, Lilia.
My journey was a little bit different. I actually moved here almost 10 years ago. I came here as a student to do my MBA, I guess in my early mid-20s. And so I think for me, the reason I moved was, obviously I was excited about the diversity that Canada offered, like the global opportunities, the exposure. And I felt like, moving to Canada and also like pursuing my master's years could help me transform my career. And I think along the way, moving to I'm originally from India, and I think like just moving across the continent to a completely different culture also like helped broaden my own perspective. I think that was the biggest learning. I came in, I guess, with a limited understanding of how things were, based on maybe what I heard or assumed or saw like in Hollywood movies, but the reality was very different, And so I think for me, a lot of it was actively listening, observing the new culture that I was now in, and then adapting to it, which looking back, I think contributed to me being able to find my footing. And I will say that, moving here as an international student and having the opportunity of, I guess, going to a university schooling environment was beneficial because I could afford to make my mistakes and then learn from them without that impacting me to a great degree. So I think like that helped build a platform for me to almost get like a cultured, with Canada and also with the job market landscape. So yeah, excited to be here and share a little bit about maybe like some of the things I've learned in my journey along with Helia as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Varun. You just both actually touched a little bit on this, but like, because your journey is different, and also when you started your job search journey and today's market, there's a whole lot of difference, right? So why do you think that there are challenges with newcomers coming into Canada and sort of finding employment or finding their footing? Why do you think that there are those challenges that exist? Varun, do you want to get started?
Sure, I can go first. So I'm gonna like again start with my own experience. I think like the two biggest challenges I had the first one was like really making sense of the employment landscape. The way the market was, the way jobs were back in India was very different from how job functions, or even like the kind of companies out here is very different. Like because I grew up with like obviously a lot of multinational brands that are big in the US, but then Canada is very different. You don't all the financial services companies in Canada, the telcos, they're all like uniquely Canadian, which for somebody in a different part of the world, unless you're like in South America or somewhere closer to Canada, you might not be as familiar with. So for me, it was about understanding and doing the work to see where I fit in, and how I could position myself in the best possible way. I think the second aspect was the act of finding employment itself. Back home, back in India, education is often a precursor for employment. And what I mean by that is if you go to a decent, good university, you are guaranteed a job, which is not the case in Canada. Even if you go to the top business schools or universities, you have to still hustle just because the market is smaller and it's a talent-rich market. So due to like different factors. And so I think that helped me understand what a relationship-driven market, it is in Canada when it comes to finding employment. So, that was something that I had to navigate. And then like interrelated to that was also the fact that I was a newcomer, and at least like, like I said, 10 years ago when I moved, not having Canadian experience was a big deal. And so I think it was also having to navigate through that, and not let that be a barrier. So really coming to terms with what that really meant, because it's such an abstract terminology and it's not something that you can really like directly solve for. It's like a bit of a chicken and egg. If you don't, you need Canadian experience to, right, to get Canadian experience. And so I would say like those were like some of the things that I struggle with, which I see a lot of newcomers struggle with as well. So, we spoke about understanding the market. We spoke about how do you put your best foot forward. And I think that can translate to different things in terms of how you show up, like your approach to networking, building relationships, and even like some of the artifacts, related to that, like your resume, your LinkedIn profile, all of which make up who you are in the context of like how people perceive you and what opportunities you get, because all of those are byproducts of that, right? So happy to go into that in depth, but I think those are like at a high level, some of the things that I think are critical for newcomers to, gain a better understanding of. And the sooner they're able to do that, the more successful they'll be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with the points that are made, and I can totally relate with them. Maybe I add something on the side of cultural familiarity with workspace and customs of people, how they show up at work, how they show up at university, and so on and so forth, because that gives a confidence to be your best. If you're even the best technically, engineer, educated person coming from another country, but culturally you feel shy, you feel intimidated to even speak, then of course you cannot put your best foot forward. For me, the period that I was a student helped me to gain some cultural knowledge. I really pushed myself to hang out with other international and with Canadian students. I did not lose connection with my Iranian roots. I was still a proud Iranian. Talking of my culture, when it was the right time, when people were asking, I would have loved to tell them about who we are, what we do, and showcase our amazing food, of course. But I try to also observe and just learn and just see how they say certain things, how they approach their studies, how they approach even communication with the professor at university. It's very different in my culture. We don't eat at the class like that. The first time I saw in a Canadian class that the students were eating, I just looked at the professor, then I looked at the other students, and I was like, okay, this is normal here, because in Iran we don't do it. So there are things that you have to just observe and interpret and learn. So gain confidence that next time you are in a position to experience that, you are showing up as someone who is aware of that culture. So my biggest advice to everyone who asks me about how you become successful in Canada and to adjust and work for Canadian organizations or start your own business, I always tell them, don't do all of your activities with people only from your country. Push yourself. I know it's intimidating. I was there. I said things and people laughed at me, or I did things and people like rolled their eyes because I was different, and it's okay. It hurt a little, but I learned a lot. And I really advise newcomers, you have done all the brave things to come to another country. Do that last brave thing to adjust yourself culturally and live a proud life as a professional.
Excellent advice, Helia. So thank you for sharing that. To both of you, if I can ask you to kind of take us through a little bit more in terms of the challenges when it comes to like your own job search journeys or things that you see on a regular basis. If you could sort of talk a little bit about examples, specific examples, if you can think about things that have happened, I think that would be a lot more sort of relevant to people than us telling, there are challenges with navigating the job search aspect of it in Canada. So if you can just, go into a little bit of a specific examples, that would be awesome.
Happy to go first. Yeah, I think and Helia brought up a really great point in terms of like the cultural differences in terms of how people operate, not just in the workplace, but also like just socially, right? Like back in India, like things are very hierarchical, which means that you defer to authority. You address people that are like maybe senior to you by sir, and a lot of that even translates to things like your business writing, which is a lot more formal. I think in Canada, I don't want to say casual, but I think it's more, everyone's seen as an equal in the workplace. You are expected to provide your opinion and insight. That's why you're there. And so I think understanding that was critical. And so for me, what that meant is when, even something as small as the way I would write emails, I think I recognized fairly early on that the way I was writing emails was very verbose, because that's how I was used to doing them in India, where I would sign off by, saying like, yours sincerely and things like that. Here you just say best or, thanks, and then sign off. You don't have to address people opening emails by saying dear or, respected person, something like that, right? So I think small adjustments like that. And then also I think that translates to the way you speak to people, right? You don't have to, call them sir or like use prefixes or suffixes. So I would say, that was one of those things. And then like I think shifting to the job market, a lot of times like I see newcomers simply relying on job boards, simply sending out 100, 200 applications. And I'm afraid that is not something that is an effective approach, just because of, what I said earlier, like the Canadian job market is relationship driven. So understanding that, and then, like understanding that it's not just your skills, and it's not just about your skills and qualifications. Sure, that matters. Like that's obviously like the bare minimum, the fundamental foundation off of which you're even like considered. But then it's also about like the story you tell about who you are and the value you bring, and how you articulate that concisely in a piece of paper that maybe is a resume or a cover letter or whatever else it might be, right? And then how you show up in those moments and talk about your experience in a way that does justice to who you are as a person. And so like I think some of the mistakes that I would do is when I'm talking to people, like my elevator pitch would be fairly mundane, straightforward. I would just be chronologically listing the things that I did, the university that I went to, the jobs that I held. And I think like it was here where I learned from meeting other people and hearing their own like stories and elevator pitches, that I didn't have to approach it that way. I remember like one of my peers at Brockman telling me about the time he interviewed for a role and how he opened with something where he says, and if there was a book about my life, it would be called Chasing My Passion and Following My Dreams. Here's why. And I felt like that was such an impactful opener. In an interview that I was in, where I was asked a question around like, how do you deal with the adversity? I hadn't planned for that question, and I think I gave like like such a boring answer on like, navigating a week where I had like lots of deadlines. And then I remember talking to my friend, and he made me realize that you've just moved across, a continent, leaving everything and everyone behind to navigate a new life. And this is what you picked to talk about adversity, right? And then that made me realize how much I was selling myself short and not leaning into the things that made me unique, right? So I think like it's about really getting clear about like spending time about like thinking about who I am, what I bring to the table, what are my superpowers, right? Because I think growing up in a culture like India, I was raised to be a very like humble, modest person, and oftentimes what that ended up like the unintended consequence of that is that I didn't really spend enough time talking about who I was, or what made me a great catch for the company that maybe was hiring, or like that I was interested in. So I think a big part of that was leaning into that, and communicating that with courage and confidence, in a way that again like brought out who I am and what I brought to the table. So
Some excellent points there, Varun. And we sort of through the PIML program, we see this on a regular basis where, you know, what we're trying to do through Canada Infinite is to also get people to do this mindset shift of how they need to be in the driver's seat with their job search journey. Because again, many cultures, it's sort of if you're reached a certain level in your career or you've developed some skills and they're so used to maybe, you know, they have a couple of people in their network that they can just call and say, hey, I'm looking for a job, and it's done. So they've not had to go through this process of self-reflection that you talked about. It's job search is a lot to do with that. It's about sort of taking that opportunity to sort of go deeper into like, okay, this is the direction I've been taking. Who am I? What is the value I've brought in my roles? And, if I'm job searching now, what is the kind of role that I should be targeting? And what's the value I'll bring to the organization, right? So sort of all of going through all of that is so essential, and especially as a newcomer coming into Canada, there's a lot going on. You're trying to absorb culture, like Helia was talking about. So there's a lot of different elements there that to think about. So Helia, do you want to just add something else to that?
Yeah, sure. Thinking of the challenges I see in newcomers' way of approaching job search, I can think of some examples of claiming something in their resume that was not honest. And I know the intention is not to
Yeah.
deceive, but to, be proud and show a good CV and later on learn that skill or learn that language or application, whatever they claim they know how to work with. But my advice is um, it's way more appreciated and welcome if you have a CV that is honest, and then during the interview or in your in your letter, like cover letter, you write honestly that I am interested in learning application A and B or anything that your team requires of me. Showing openness to learn shows that I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I am open to learn what you need from me. It shows you're a team player. You want to help organization to succeed. But if you show a very, full and fancy and shiny CV, but then start working and they realize that, oh, this person doesn't know even ABC of things that they have claimed, then you will lose the trust and it will be very difficult to rebuild that. So I advise newcomers to show honesty in their resume and also openness to learn and be a problem solver for the organization in their cover letter, in their interviews. And maybe a second thing is to reach out to organizations such as JVS and mentors, people they know who have done their journey in the past, and ask them, do you have 10 minutes to take a look at my CV together? Or can I email my CV to you? Take a look at it when you have time. Everyone is busy and we want to be respectful of their time. And then send me back 2 bullet points. What do you think I should change? So they know you respect their time. And people who have done this journey, they love to help because they can see themselves in your shoes. So ask for advice. It doesn't show that you're not good at what you do or you're not there and ready for job market. It in fact shows that you're very serious. And when they give you advice, think about it and apply it to your CV. I'm sure it will help you in your process.
That's an excellent point, Helia. So do you have any special sort of advice for specifically women who are immigrating? I think, sort of the challenges or barriers are slightly more, I would say, my own personal journey included, because, when you immigrate, I think in a family, usually, and I don't want to sort of say this is what happens always, but usually it's the childcare responsibilities or the sort of the settlement process, everything, it's the woman who is planning. And so a man gets to focus on the career aspect of it, finding employment, all that. So the gap that starts building for sort of even as a skilled individual, that can go on for a few years, and then that affects your self-confidence. So there's sort of a domino effect there. I'm also really happy to share that we are in the Canada Infinite program launching a new initiative where for pre-arrival women who are thinking about changing their careers. So career exploration sessions is what we're often offering through our PACE initiative. So really excited that we are launching that in July. But any advice that you have for women who are immigrating or who are here?
Well, I was lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, that I didn't have children and responsibility of a family when I immigrated to Canada. But I completely see your point, and I see it in so many immigrants that I know. What I say is that this is a country where women can grow and there are resources and the culture allows it and supports it, especially now in 2025. I tell to my fellow female immigrants that if you also want to advance in your career, reach out to the resources that exist. Now, since I don't have a child, I haven't checked what is out there, but I'm sure if they ask you and organizations such as JVS, they can find out resources that help them to navigate these things. Don't be afraid to ask for this question. It doesn't mean you're a bad mom if you want to spend some of your time to build your career. It means, in fact, you're a great mom because you want to make sure you are a proud person, a proud woman, and also you can show up as an amazing mother. So my advice is just this is the country where women can advance. If it is any country else that you are coming from, I'm sure here, if you reach out to the resources, there is a way of helping you navigate the difficulties and complexities of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so let's talk a little bit about strategies for job search. You both shared in your responses earlier lots of good strategies already. Are there any other specific ones that worked really well for you that you want to sort of share with everybody? And also, if you could talk a little bit about networking, because that seems to be like always the key aspect that really works for in terms of job searching in Canada. But also that can be a big barrier for newcomers who don't have a network. So just sort of, if you could talk a little bit about that.
I can kick things off. Yeah, I mean, this is a question that I always like being asked, because when I think about job search strategies, I think so. There's this like statement in investing where you always need to have a diversified portfolio, and I think that goes and holds true also for your job search strategy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And I think that's what I meant when I initially alluded to not simply relying on job boards. And so I think that you have to try a few different things. Applying to jobs can be one of them, but like just make sure you supplement that with many other things, including networking. And then I think like networking is something that a lot of newcomers find to be like an alien concept when they move to Canada, because it just maybe does not exist, or the concept is not talked about as much as it is in Canada. And I think like in a nutshell and in essence, networking is just relationship building. Um, and it can be a very effective strategy for you in your job search if you do it well. And I think that's what's key. And so I would say like even before you start networking, like building an understanding of the right way to network and the right way to build relationships can go a longer way. How you, and I think it is very tied to that, acculturation in a new country, like understanding how Canadians, operate and talk, and adapting yourself in a way that makes you resonate with the people that you're reaching out to. So even being mindful about like how you send requests on LinkedIn, like obviously LinkedIn can be a resource that, um, you know, you should be leveraging when you go out to events and meet people. How do you like introduce yourself? How do you stay connected? How do you maybe ask them for maybe a coffee chat, or a one-on-one separately? Things like that, I think are key. I think Helia alluded to asking for advice. what I often see from a lot of newcomers is that they don't ask for advice, they ask for jobs, which I think can be detrimental. We used to have, like, in business school, we used to say that you ask for a job, you get advice. You ask for advice, you could end up getting a job because you get the information that you need to bridge the gap that you maybe have to help you get that job. So I would say, like, network authentically. Like, another thing that I see is, people networking for the sake of an outcome, right?
Using
So, like,
templates to reach out.
yeah, right. Like, just generic templates, and also, like, just, like, almost seeing it like a box that they need to check. Like, I need to network with so many people in a month. I don't think it's about quantity. I think it's really, I would say, like, it needs to be intrinsically driven. And what I mean by that is, let your curiosity drive your networking journey. Your curiosity about learning, about different people's journeys, understanding their stories, and then connecting the dots for yourself to see how you can learn from their journeys. And I think when you do that, you connect with people and you leave a better impression versus simply reaching out to someone because you saw a job in their company and you want to know more about the job or ask them to refer you. So yeah, I spoke about, like, I think some of the, I guess, like, pitfalls of, like, maybe, like, not networking in the right way. Um, I think networking well is an art. It's an art that you often, like, I think it comes with practice. So I would say, like, continue to put yourself out there. Ask for feedback. I think, feedback is a big part of, like, being self-aware, right? Even something as small as at the end of a coffee chat, or, like, just asking for feedback around, like, how do you think my introduction was? Do you think I was being too, um, you know, too long, or, like, concise, or, um, do you think I came off the right way when I introduced myself, or, like, when I asked you questions, do you think I was prepared enough? Things like that, which you can then, like, incorporate into, like, future conversations that will help you, show up as not just as a more confident networker, but also someone um, who's, again, like, perceived, and first impressions are often everything, right? So you want to make sure you nail that first impression so you have a relationship for life.
Very good points, Varun. Thanks for sharing. It's like, I think, for someone who's hearing all of this new, there could be the contradiction of, you know, don't use general templates with also, like, you know, learning about Canadian culture, figuring out, like, how do I bring my authentic self? Who am I in Canada? It's a lot of new things that they have to navigate. So, but it is important to think about all of these aspects, right? That's what would, at the end of it, bring results. So, thank you for sharing that. Hilia, do you have anything you want to share?
Yes. I was going to talk about English and how having a good language and communication skill helps it. But I want to first add something to your point. It's true that there are some general templates to communicate, let's say on LinkedIn or send an email. In 2025, people have an amazing tool in their access called ChatGPT or any of other, those AI tools that they can bounce ideas. You can just, yes, get a general template, maybe from someone who advised you to use it, or from a website that advises people from your country to find job in this way, but then give it to ChatGPT, clarify for it, take the role of a manager in Canada. I want to send this message to them. I want to be respectful of their time. So I want the message to be short. I want it to be on point. I want it to be professional. What would you do to customize it? And know this about me. I am, this professional. I'm an engineer. I have X years of experience. How would you customize this message so it's authentic? And then don't take even their response as a, final. You can still bounce ideas back with them, and you can still customize it. But ChatGPT and AI tools like that can help you brainstorm and, customize these templates. So to my point about English, many immigrants who come here, their first language isn't English. So to improve their English speaking and understanding before coming to Canada and during their first several years, I think is an effort that will pay back in time. I really worked on it. I was at a good, reasonable English level when I came to Canada, but I really pushed myself to go to events that most people were foreigners like me. So the only language that was common was English. So I could hear them speak. I could learn the application of certain words that I knew all of them mean the same, but I could learn the application of this one is in this situation and the other one in another situation. So I really advise strongly to improve your English and keep learning, and don't be in a hurry. When I was at university, I was teaching English as a second language to some other newcomers or new students, and often they were telling me, "Oh, how can I say something cool in English?" or "How can I use this, like this is slang?" And I understand it. We don't want to be boring in our new country. We want to be cool. We want to make friends. My advice is take your time. It's better to sound boring for a couple of years, but technically correct, speak reasonably correct and clear so people understand you. And then while you learn cultural nuances, then you will know when to say something cool or something casual. I wanted to add that. And maybe last thing is an amazing place to network with people of your expertise are associations. There are many associations in Canada. I am my education has been in operations and supply chain management. And now that I started working as a consultant, I am also a consultant. So one of the things I did was that I became member of an association of supply chain managers in Toronto and an association of Canadian management consultants. And they have, first of all, lots of free resources. And second of all, they speak English in my field. So whatever keyword I do not know, by listening to them or watching their videos, I learn. And then in webinars or lots of events that are even free for members, I meet other people. I tell them who I am, what I do, and it opens doors for me. Maybe not necessarily for a job right now, but it just makes me feel I'm a part of an organization and I can learn from them. I think for a price of $250 for a year, it's a reasonable investment. It's not cheap, but it's a reasonable investment to make great connections and be inspired.
Excellent points. Thank you so much. This question again, both of you are mentors in various different areas that and programs and initiatives. Why is giving back as a mentor important to you? Leah, do you want to get us started on that one?
Sure. I feel like it's a fulfillment, it's a joy. I have experienced ups and downs during my cultural adjustment, finding job, and I don't want all the difficulties I experience someone else does. I want to just share them, help them. And when I was leaving Iran to come to Canada for my studies, I had just finished my master's studies, and I remember when we had this ceremony and they gave us our degree. We all made an oath as an engineer to be of service, to build and etc. So when I finished the oath, I knew that I'm now going to be in Iran to serve my country and to serve my people, because I was planning to come to Canada. But now that I'm established, I'm trying to give back and just do as I promised.
That's lovely. Thank you. Varun?
Yeah, I think why giving back is important. I think it's because someone else was kind enough to give me their time when they didn't really have to. And I think when enough people do that for you, it makes a mark, it leaves a mark, and then it makes you realize that you want to spend the rest of your life being that person for other people. And so I think there's obviously that paying it forward aspect to it. But also, I think like I've learned and grown as much, if not more, from mentoring people as much as I have from being mentored. And so I think there's the aspect of reverse mentoring as well. I consider a lot of my mentees to be my mentors as well, because they give me perspectives that I can get elsewhere. So it's a two-way street. And I think it's not purely selfless. I think it's selfish as well, because when I support someone in terms of like them finding a job and they do, I feel very invested because I think I know that I had a small part to play in it. So that's, I think, the selfish fulfillment that I get from helping someone. So.
That was awesome. Thank you, Varun. Before we end, any final thoughts? Specifically, what is that one advice that you would give the job searching you earlier in your career? Like, what is that you would have wished that you could give the advice on? If you want to just share.
I think it's similar to what Varun said. I was really underestimating and underselling my experience. And if newcomers gather advice from people who are right now in Canada and genuinely share, this is my background, this is what I have done, how should I present myself, how much salary I can ask for, and start, yes, being modest is good, but don't undersell yourself and show openness to learn. I'm sure they will succeed. And if I could talk to myself 10 years ago when I finished my studies and I started working, I would just say um, be patient and present yourself with the best foot forward, and it's going to be all right. Be patient.
I think what I would tell myself, like throughout my life, I felt like I've always been behind. And I think a lot of newcomers feel that way as well because they're overwhelmed by all the things they need to learn, all the things that they don't have, that Canadians have inherently because they've built it in the time that they've spent here, right? And so I think I would just tell myself, and I guess all the newcomers who are listening, you're not behind. I think you're just building a foundation that nobody else can see yet. So trust in the process, and you're on your own journey, you're on your path, um, and yeah, lean into it and be resilient, and you will feel fulfilled.
Excellent points. Thank you both so much. And I think with that, coming to an end of the session, I do want to keep chatting with both of you, but we do have sort of limited times on some of these aspects. So thank you both, and thank you all for joining us today. And I really want to thank both our mentors for sharing their honest stories, their wisdom and encouragement more than anything else. And we hope all the participants are leaving this session with not just tips and strategies, but also a sense of connection and confidence in their own journeys. Remember that every job search is unique, but you're not alone. And there's strength in learning from those who've walked the path before you. And if you're interested in connecting with a mentor or learning more about our programs, please do reach out. We are here to support you. If you're arriving, especially in GTA, do sign up for JVS Toronto services. And so with that, until next time, please take care and wishing you all the very best. You've got this. Good luck. Thank you so much.
Good luck, everyone. Goodbye.